What is up, everybody? Yes, I'm back again with a solocast. A lot of you guys have reached out last week just being like, hey, you should do more of those. That was fun. And I was like, all right, cool. That was actually pretty fun for me too. So we're going to dive into a lot of stuff today. But before I do that, I have a couple important announcements that I'll share at the end. Just want to give you guys kind of that feedback just to stick around until the end. And the one thing I want to preempt today's conversation with before I get started is that everything I'm going to talk about today, and I think this obviously goes without saying, but I know that some of the topics I'm going to talk about can be very trigger heavy. This is just my viewpoint, okay? This does not mean I'm right. It does not mean you're wrong. It's simply my podcast, and I'm going to share what has helped me in my life, because what you guys have been asking a lot about is, how did I actually get the courage to go out on my own and create a business? Did I know what I was doing? You know, a lot of you guys hit me up for that. And then a lot of people have reached out recently being like, hey, I want to hear more about these Hermetic principles and the principles from A Course in Miracles and disappearance of the universe. Like, can you dive deeper into that? And honestly, this has become one of my favorite topics to talk about. I talk about it with my cannabis stuff all the time. I don't specifically say this is this principle right here, but you guys will hear as I'm going through this kind of how a lot of what you may see me say online or in podcasts or whatever in these podcasts comes rooted from these principles from either A Course in Miracles or the Hermetic Principles. And again, there's other systems I utilize too. I kind of just take what I like from each system. But at the end of the day, you know, this is just what's really helped me to be able to become the man I am today and to continue allowing me to become the man I'm meant to become. And so I'm going to be sharing some examples. I wrote up some stuff here, and I'm going to share some examples after I go through a little bit of just opening the container with each principle. And we're going to start with the Hermetic Principles, okay? So if you guys have heard the 7 Hermetic Principles before, don't worry. All right, I'm going to create fun, and I'm going to make this very practical because a lot of this is written in very old language, all right? Like when you hear as within, so without. It's like, okay, I get what that means, but maybe a lot of people might not. I didn't get what that first meant when I first heard it. I kind of got the idea, as above, so below. I'm like kind of esoteric. But as I started to find ways to make them more practical, that's when they really became to life for me. And so again, you know, information just on its own is just useless in my opinion. You know, it doesn't really become useful until we put it into practice. And there's a chance that when I go through this, it just doesn't resonate with you. Cool. It's not your thing. You know, I'll start with this too. Always remember, and this is one of the most important pieces of wisdom I could possibly bestow on you guys, there are endless rivers that ultimately reach the same sea. The only one that is quote unquote wrong is the one that tells you there's only one way to get there. So for instance, when we look at religion, how many people in a certain religion, maybe you've experienced this, I've definitely experienced it quite a bit, try to tell you that because you like cannabis or psychedelics, or because in my case, I believe in the A Course in Miracles version of Jesus, not the biblical version, that I'm going to burn in hell and all of these things, and I'm wrong and all of this stuff, okay? You know, at the end of the day, religion does a very good job of not only creating condition, but also trying to make people wrong. Why would anyone try to make someone feel wrong? Well, it's because they don't really believe what they're saying. Like, if someone comes to me and they're like, Ryan, I listened to that solocast you did on Hermetic Principles, and I think it's bullshit. Well, if I feel an uptick in my energy, like, no, and I have to try to prove them wrong, what does that mean? That I don't even really believe I'm right, for me, subjectively, because there really is no objective reality. I can think blue is the best color in the world, and to me, that makes me right for me, but it doesn't make me right objectively. Blue is not objectively the best color in the world, but it is the best color, wink, wink. But, you know, at the end of the day, these are some of the things I wanted to say at the beginning here, because, you know, I imagine you guys have been listening to me long enough now where you're probably on a level of consciousness where you can have a conflicting viewpoint with someone else and not think that because that person is saying, well, hey, I believe this, that it makes you wrong. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, when someone from a religion or someone that believes in schmaxines or whatever it is tries to tell you, no, this is why, and they need to be right, that's my cue to be like, okay, you can be right. Have all the rightness you need in your world. Because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to prove anyone wrong by saying what I choose to believe and what I choose to think is right from my subjective viewpoint of reality. So now that's out of the way, let's dive in, okay? So for me, when I was talking about endless rivers reaching the same sea, some of these rivers could be plant medicine. Some of them could be religion, even Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Could be Hinduism, could be anything, right? It could be playing guitar, it could be taking walks with your dog, right? Like any of these things can allow you to see God. So at the end of the day, it really just comes to like, what flavor, what shirt do you like having on you? Do you like the Hermetic Principles? Do you like Christianity? Whatever it is, as long as it helps you feel closer to God and through unconditioned or to unconditioned, that's perfect in my book anyway. So for me, when I was going through and researching a lot of different rivers, let's say in my early 20s, there were a lot that I looked into that were really cool. I did a lot of time in Kabbalah. I did a lot of time with a lot of different things, and they were all cool. But for me personally, I like very simplistic systems, because what I choose to believe, and I've said this many times in the show, is that simplicity is the language of God. Complexity is the language of the ego. So for me, that's my kind of like, I don't know, quantitative metric to figure out what actually works well for me. So in my research, I found the 7 Hermetic Principles, and that was kind of my first like, whoa, this is totally for me. And so we're going to go over them together. Okay. And I'm going to give you guys practical examples, like I said before, of how to understand this stuff in a real world way. All right. So the first one we're going to look at is the first principle, which is mentalism. And it's described as the all-being mind. Okay. Now, how I would choose to view this is, if you guys have heard me talk about how life is just a collection of stories, or said differently, if we are the creator of our reality, which I choose to believe, then the narratives or stories we tell ourselves, about life, about anything, right? What the color blue is like, whatever it is, those are the scripts that reality is created upon, okay? And what happens with a lot of people, what happened with me, and I imagine you guys, if you're listening to this too, I don't think anyone has been subject to not having this happen in their life, is that you come into an awareness where you start to realize that some of the scripts you're running are not your scripts to begin with. Number 2, how the hell did they even get in there? And number 3, they're not working. Like, they're not leading to desirable outcomes. They're not leading to a fulfilling life. And so the kind of disempowered way to look at this is, woe is me. Oh, I'm a victim to life. If the government would just get their act together, then I'd be happy. If my job would just give me a raise, then I would be fine. Well, any of these kind of victimized type thoughts. Because what is that essentially doing? It's taking away all of your power to be the creator of your reality, the conscious creator. And I talk about this often too. It was in 2019 for me that this hammer hit for me, where I really started to realize, fuck, I'm where I am because I'm telling myself this is where I'm meant to be. No other reason. I told myself that the company that took the dispensary over was to blame. I was telling myself the world was to blame. I was telling myself my parents were to blame. My friends were to blame. Inflation was to blame. Whatever it was, to not have to own my own unconscious guilt for the fact that I wasn't showing up for myself. And so that was a hard pill to swallow. All right. It definitely sucked and it stung a little bit. But after I went through the other side, I realized, oh my God. You know, that quote that Terence McKenna says, nature loves courage. This is how it all works. This is how anyone who's really touched the alchemical gold, this is how they've done it. By hurling themselves into the abyss and realizing that waiting for them on the other side is a feather bed. And that is what I discovered in allowing myself to look into my thinking and start to think about my thinking. Because I had to accept, fuck, I am where I am because of me. But then on the other side, I was like, fuck, I am where I am only because of me. So if it's only because of me and I'm me, then I can change all that. Oh my God. And the analogy I use here is, if you guys have seen Home Alone, when Kevin comes downstairs, he's wishing for his parents to be gone. He's really upset with them. And he comes down the next day and no one's there. He's calling out, Mom, Dad, Buzz, like no one's answering. And he comes down and in his little brain, he's like, oh my God, I made my family disappear. That's the challenging side of it. Then he's like, oh my God, I made my family disappear. Holy shit, all empowering, right? Because he believed that his wish, his command of reality had made his family disappear. All right. So at first he thought it was random. Uh-oh, where's my family? How am I going to get taken care of? Then he realized, oh, I wished for this. This is exactly what I wanted to happen, and it did happen. What does that mean about my ability to create my reality now? And so again, like, that's why I love this first principle so much of mentalism, because, and they're all important in their own ways, but to me, the first 2 principles are the ones I am constantly maniacally going over in my brain. All right. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a read through of another way to think about this, because I like to make these practical. All right. Like I was saying before. And so if we think about this, right, if we think about the principle of mentalism, the all is mind, you can think about it like this. When we recognize how much our thoughts manifest every day, whether internally as a physiological or emotional state, or externally as the things we do or places we go, we see that when we can control our mind, we control our lives. We can get better at this through spiritual practices such as meditation, which help us train the mind. So one of the other reasons I liked writing that was because I like to make practicality, for the 8th time I've said that. And, for years I heard meditate every day, 20 minutes twice a day. I'm like, okay. Do breath work every day. Okay. Do fasting every week. Okay. But I didn't really know why the hell I was doing this, aside from just like, it's good for you. But through this principle, we can realize, now I see a real point for meditation. At least this was my interpretation when I started realizing what meditation was actually meant to do. For any of us that like plant medicine, this is a microdose of what we get in a plant medicine experience. Now, when I say microdose, I mean typically most of us aren't meditating for 4 hours at a time. If we were, we would get the macrodose experience we get in a psychedelic. But for me, I don't know about for you, I'm microdosing. I'm doing 20 minutes a day, twice a day. But I get to have glimpses of the fact that I am creating my reality. And the more that I rep that, like my good buddy Mark England always says, what's the difference with anything when it comes, or what's the difference in any field when it comes to an amateur or a professional? The only difference is reps. How often do they rep the same kick 10,000 times? So for me, meditation, I don't just do it as like a checklist item anymore. I did at one point. But now I do it because it every single day I'm reminding myself of this truth. All is mind. All is mind. I control my reality by controlling my thoughts. And by controlling my thoughts, I don't actually mean that's a doing process. I actually mean it's much more observing them and realizing they're not me. And that was the thing that I saw when I was 16 and I first connected with cannabis, but I didn't really understand what it meant at the time. Like I experienced it. I knew it was real. But I thought I had to have cannabis to get there. I thought it was some special thing that cannabis gave me. I had missed a lot of the mark at that age. But now, as I've been meditating avidly for about 8 years now, along with doing plant medicine and all these things, I've started to really understand and embody this in everyday life. Now, does that mean that I'm perfect at it? Hell fucking no. But it means that I'm better than I was yesterday. And that's the only way I gauge myself now is, am I showing up better than I was yesterday? Am I showing up more aware than I was yesterday? Am I showing up with more wisdom for myself than I had yesterday? And if the answer is yes, I'm all good. I can let my hands off the steering wheel at that point. So that's principle number 1, mentalism. The second one, which is my other personal favorite, is the law of correspondence, which states as within, so without, as above, so below. Definitely the most popular Hermetic principle, just objectively in nature. It's the one that before I ever knew Hermetics, I had heard that a bunch of times, whether it was through Paul Chek or Aubrey Marcus or other religious practices, whatever it is, or spiritual practices. And so what does this really mean? Well, this one gets really interesting because I say often, I don't know if I've said it on the show before, but I say often that if everyone in the world could wake up embodying just this one principle, the world would change immensely overnight for the better. And the reason for that is how many times, and I've been guilty of this, all right, so don't worry, it's all good. We all start somewhere. But how many times have you yourself or someone you heard or someone around you, how many times have you said something like, when they do that, they make me so mad? Or said differently, when the government mandates schmaxines, they get me so anxious. Or any amalgamation of that. When they or he or she or it does this, I feel this. Well, what that's doing is also giving away your power, because the only one that can make you feel anything is you, right? So again, if we understand as within, so without, we realize everything is an inside job. That if someone says something and I get upset, that's my work to do. It has nothing to do with them. The thirst trap that the ego wants to lay is that it's them and you should be mad at them and divide and create condition. They're this, I'm that. But that's the thirst trap, all right? Remember I was saying at the beginning, the reason why if someone comes to me these days and they say, you're wrong because of blah, 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 I just go, okay. because it's not like I don't feel that part of me that wants to be like, well, no, you're wrong. But I just don't give into that anymore because I realize there is no right or wrong. So if I want to be right, I'm actually wrong. And at the same time, if they are trying to, no, you're wrong because of this, blah, 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 it just shows me they don't really believe what they're saying they believe anyway. And if I really believe what I believe for me, then I shouldn't feel any triggeredness around them having a contrary opinion. That's all it is. It's an opinion. That's all I have here. Opinions. All right. As Shane Gillis says, I'm just talking shit. All right. I'm going to give you guys a different way to think about this based on what I wrote earlier. And that is, so applying this law, right, the law of correspondence, is all about understanding your connection to the world around you and how you're showing up for yourself in the universe through your thoughts and subsequently your actions. When we have a firm grasp on how we're interacting with life and how it's affecting us, we can recognize and break patterns. We can live in alignment with our highest good and feel harmonious with everything there is. And why is that? Because we realize that we are the creators of our reality. No one out there is making us anything. Cannabis doesn't make us lazy. Cannabis doesn't make us anxious. Our parents don't make us hate them. The world doesn't make us mad. We do that. We are the only ones that do that. And the more that we can embody that, at least from my experience, the better life gets. Why? Because you're actually starting to be a real adult. You know, one of the challenging things that I've discovered over the last 10 years, both in myself and in other people, is just because you're a certain chronological age, just because you've woken up a certain number of days on this dream illusion planet, does not mean you're actually mature. Like if you look around at the world right now, like when I go on Facebook or Instagram and I go into the comments on anything and I see people arguing, typically it's people that are older. It's like some guy that's like 50, 60, you know, and again, like, what is that? That guy looks like he should be mature, but he's clearly not because he's arguing with people as if there is a real right and wrong. So what's happening is that, I mean, this is multifaceted. I'll make this quick, but what I feel is happening is that we've almost learned nothing about actual reality. We've learned everything about the fake dream illusion thirst trap world, the entertainment show, as it's called. But we haven't actually learned anything about who we are, what we are, where we come from, where we're going, and what our real purpose is here. And so at the end of the day, this is why this stuff happens. That's why someone can be 50, 60, worked in a corporate job for 30 years, has a 401k, whatever, but still can't manage their own emotions. It's almost like someone trying to bench press 400 pounds when they've never bench pressed 50 pounds. Like it just doesn't make any sense, right? But imagine in that analogy, the dude doing it looks jacked, all right? Because maybe he just, I don't know, did steroids or whatever it is. Even though I know that if you actually do steroids, you still have to work out. But let's just use this as an example. It's almost like you see a guy that's ridiculously ripped and he tries to go bench press 400 pounds and you realize he can't lift more than 50. And you're like, why do you look like that then? That doesn't make any sense. That's one of the biggest challenges I've gone through. It's just like, oh God, that's a interesting perspective. Now, again, I don't call it right or wrong, good or bad, whatever. It's just like, wow, that's very interesting. That's not what I grew up thinking. So again, I rest my case. Okay. So we're going to move on now to the third principle, which is the principle of vibration, aka nothing rests, everything vibrates. So this is the idea that everything is alive. Everything is God. You know, if you've heard that before, everything is alive, everything's God. This is where that really comes from. At least is how I see it. If we understand the rock outside is not dead, it just might look like it's not moving through our human system here of our eyes and our senses. But what does even science say? That we don't see 96% of what is already known through science to be there. So it's obvious that we only see 4% of visible reality. So it makes sense that we wouldn't see if something was vibrating if we understand that everything is vibrating. Because I have people ask, well, why can't I see it then? It's like, well, did you ever take 5 grams of mushrooms and go look at the same rock? Looks a little bit different. You can actually see the vibrations. And so at the end of the day, if we choose to believe that everything is alive, which is how I choose to say this, it allows us, at least me, it has allowed me to see myself as part of the whole, as part of the same omniscient being that is playing itself out in infinite amount of probabilities and different conditions. Like a rock is really no different than a human in the sense of their foundation. They're both alive from the essence of God. How they show up through condition, aka what they look like, what their life is, like, yeah, of course that looks different, but the essence of them is the same. You know, it's almost like how Rumi says, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean within a drop. everything here, this camera, this computer I'm on, everything is the ocean within a drop if we choose to look at life through this perspective. And I'll read the other thing I wrote about it because I think this brings it home too. So this will look different for everyone ultimately. But to apply this third principle, you want to not only do things, but think thoughts that allow you to be in a state of ease, where your body is vibrating at a more positive level. Okay, this is the whole idea of the law of attraction as well. Applying the first two principles can help you start to do this. And you might be noticing all of these principles are deeply interwoven. That is a good thing. They are. It's more of a yes and, not a no but. So with this principle, we acknowledge that we have the power to control our vibration rather than our vibration controlling us. So that's the two things that I like to take from this principle myself. Everything is alive. And I, as the creator of my reality, the one telling myself the stories, the one that is choosing to either take accountability or project, based on those decisions, I can either allow my vibration to rise or I can allow it to fall. And based on if it's rising or falling, I'm going to have different experiences that speak to what energy I'm in. Like if I'm having low and negative thoughts, I can understand I'm in a low vibration. And as a result of that, I'm going to be pulling in things that are resonant, like sympathetically resonant with that low vibration. And the question I must ask myself is, do I want to live in this vibration? Because if I don't ask myself that, and I project why I'm feeling this way out to the world, well, abracadabra. I'm going to stay in that vibration and believe I'm powerless to change it, because I believe that everything that can change it is out there, away from me. That if only I had better success in life, if only I had more money, if only people looked at me differently, then I could manifest the dream reality. And it's just like in my 2019 situation, that's what I realized. I realized I'm the one keeping my vibration low based on the stories I'm telling myself and the projections I'm giving out into the world. I'm giving all my power away. And that is what's keeping my vibration low. And as soon as I took accountability for that and I started making changes in my life, such as quitting cannabis for 3 months, not because cannabis was bad, but because I was using it in a way that was not empowering me. So until I started to change, nothing else would change. And that's the beauty of this system, guys, and why I love it so much, because it's simple, right? Like we can all do this. It doesn't matter if you have a bunch of money. It doesn't matter. Like everyone can close their eyes and meditate. Everyone can practice forgiveness, something we're going to talk about later in this episode. Everyone can choose to start accepting accountability over their life. Even if you're a paraplegic, you can do that. So these are universal systems, and that's why I like it. I don't like having to go to a certain building, pay a certain amount of money, sacrifice a certain animal or whatever the hell religion says in order to be forgiven in the eyes of God or be accepted in the eyes of God. That's not universal. All right. What if I don't live near that building? What if I can't drive? What if I can't get there? Right? What if no one can drive me and I'm paraplegic? Does that mean that because I can't go to church every Sunday, I'm not a God-fearing human? That just doesn't make any sense to me. All right. For me personally. Moving on. Okay. The fourth principle, the principle of polarity, another one that's one of my favorites. So everything has poles or opposites, or said differently, everything is on that two opposites are actually a lot more alike than they are different. So a great, very practical example of this is hot and cold, temperature. If I didn't know better, I would think 100-degree day has nothing in similarity with a 20-degree day. All right. And for those of you who use Celsius, you can put in your own temperature gauge. But actually, they're a lot more similar than they are different because they're opposite ends of the same spectrum. Hot's on this end, cold's on that end. So they're really just two poles of the same thing. And one of the most empowering and kind of practical ways I've thought about polarity is that most of us are just swinging from polarity to polarity. People reach out to me all the time. Ryan, I was addicted to cannabis. Then I quit completely. Then I decided to go back and now I'm back to everyday use. And now I want to quit again. And it's like, yeah, no wonder you're having issue because you're swinging from pendulum to pendulum. And that's very dysregulating to the nervous system. The idea of polarity is you want to find balance. It's like those Chinese balls, right? To the level that you pick a ball up on one side and you drop it, it will make the ball on the other side go up to that. But eventually they start balancing, right? So the goal here, in my opinion, with all of life in general is balance. And so with polarity, it's like, do you want your house to be 150 degrees Fahrenheit? Probably not. Do you want it to be 0 degrees Fahrenheit? Probably not. You probably want it to be right in the middle of that, like around 68, 70 degrees, maybe 65 if you're sleeping at night, you want it cold. Like we already understand this through many aspects of our life. We already get this, but yet it's a little more challenging, at least in my experience, it's been more challenging to see when I'm doing it in things that aren't so obvious, right? Like if I walk into my house and it's annihilating hot or freezing cold, I notice that right away. I want to make a change about it. But I don't notice it as much when maybe it's, I don't know, drinking coffee or whatever, where I'm like, oh man, I'm having 3 cups of coffee a day. I should quit coffee. Well, yeah, maybe that's the answer. But maybe the answer is maybe I'll have a cup a day. Maybe that's my balance at this point. So I'm going to read something once again that kind of brings us home. So the principle of polarity explains that seemingly opposite things are actually one and the same at varying degrees. All right. A simple example of this, like aforementioned, is hot and cold. Cold is just the absence of heat, and they're both doing one thing, which is temperature. Physical matter and spiritual energy are the same thing, with spiritual energy vibrating at a much higher level, such that it can't be perceived by our senses, but yet it's still there. Remember, we don't see 96% of what we already know and science says is there. Love and hate are 2 ways of experiencing the same thing, a relationship towards something. This is the foundation of alchemy, or the ability to transmute your experience at will. So again, one of my favorite quotes, and you guys will discover a little bit more about me in this, is exploring shadow work is a great way to figure out new kinks. All right. So I'm going to be vague here because this includes other people in my life and I want to be private about that in respect of them. But let's just say that there's been many experiences in my life where I experienced something that I would go, ugh, to, like something that I don't think I want to experience again. But then maybe as I'm getting intimate with my partner, all of a sudden, that seems like a fun thing. Like it seems like something I want to explore. And when you explore that in a safe container, all of a sudden what happens? You transmute it. What I experienced the first time I tried this, and I'm going to keep it vague, all right? If you guys ever see me in person, maybe I'll share more of the story. But it doesn't even really matter the context because the idea is the most important. That things that were the most traumatizing to me have actually become some of my greatest excitements in life. Like, I'll give you guys a very PG example of this, okay? I used to be terrified to speak in public. Like, I'm talking fucking terrified. Like, I had a whole system when I was in college where I had speech class and I knew how to just pretty much fake the assignments. And I knew the guy wasn't keeping attendance, so I would never show up. And, again, there were just ways that I hacked my way around ever having to get in front of people. Look at what my job is now, guys. I do nothing but be on camera these days. I do nothing but do podcasts with people that are my idols sometimes, that I've idolized for years. I public speak. I host workshops. You know what I mean? Like my whole life now is that. And I fucking love it. But at one point, it was my biggest fear. And so again, what is that? It's speaking of the law of polarity and transmutation and the process of alchemy, which is not something we're going to dive into deeply today. That would take a lot longer. And I have a couple things I'm going to go over aside from just Hermetic Principles today. But again, that's what's really helped me understand, holy shit, hot and cold are actually the same spectrum. Cold plunges are another example of this, actually. I didn't even think about that. And saunas, actually. When I was a kid, I didn't like being too hot. I also didn't like being too cold. And I'll tell you guys, right before I walk in an ice bath, especially if it's January here in Boston, everything in me is like, fuck this, fuck this, fuck this. But the second I get in, actually, no, it's more about 20 seconds after I get in and I kind of calm myself down, I get the fucking best high. And when I get out of that tub, I'm like, I'll do fucking 3 more sessions. I feel amazing. And that's transmutation. You took something that was fearful and you turned it into something that was empowering. So again, it's a really good way to think about the law of polarity. So now we're going to look at the law and principle of rhythm, which is the idea that everything flows in and out. Everything has tides, all right? So a good way to think about this is very practically, once again, think about the day. The sun's out, right? And then the night comes. And then the sun's out and the night comes. And the more that we can get ourselves on that natural cycle, the simpler life feels. For some of us, we choose to stay up all night and sleep all day. I did that for a while. What I can tell you guys personally, and I'm not saying this is objective, but that was a very chaotic version of me that lived that life, being in clubs all night, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not going to say it wasn't fun. I don't regret it at all. It was an experiment, and any experience is valid in the eyes of Creator. But now doing the way I'm doing now, waking up at 6 a.m. and going to bed at 10, oh my God. It makes so much sense. Now, again, when I was staying up late and sleeping late, I knew I was making that decision. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, darn, why does everything feel weird? I knew it felt weird, but that was the experiment I was trying at that time. And so in learning more about this, I've started to get more into the natural rhythm of nature. And I think that's why so many people are talking about earthing. So many people are talking about sunshine. Like these things are kind of, it's actually kind of funny. I talk about this often. That like these things are seen as like, whoa, man, like the sun, like you're getting out in the sun. Like how long are you staying out there, man? Like 60 minutes per day? Like you getting your dose of sun? Are you doing your perennium sunning? Dude, you know what I'm doing in the morning? I get outside and I just put my feet right in the grass. Whoa, dude, like what's that biohack called? It's like, bro, that biohack is called the simplest way to look at humanity and the simplest way for humanity to thrive ever. It's like literally our blueprint. But it's almost seen now as like biohacking, right? Because of how away from the rhythm of nature we had gotten as a society. Working under fluorescent lighting, grinding till you drop. I mean, I think it's in Korea, they actually have a whole idea for someone who dies at work and how it's so noble and honorous to be able to die working, right? That's not really the rhythm of nature. Okay. Now, again, am I saying that's bad? No, it's an interesting life choice based on my subjective viewpoint of reality to make. But again, any experience is valid in the eyes of Creator, but you will have some consequences as a result of living out of touch with the rhythm of, say, nature or the rhythm of your own life, the rhythm of your own emotions, whatever it may be. So now I'll read a little bit to do with this. Okay. So closely related to the principle of polarity, the fifth principle states that between the opposing poles, there exists an inherent rhythm, all right? The tides move in and out. We inhale and we exhale. Everything is in motion. Nature has its seasons, and so too do we. Understanding this principle allows us to recognize our life's and the universe's natural rhythms, so we can actually work with them rather than having them work against us. So for instance, I'll give you a practical example when it comes to cannabis. I understand for me that certain seasons of the year, I like connecting with more cannabis than others. For me, springtime, I don't know, just doesn't really resonate with me. I don't know why. I don't really care to know why. I've just understood that about myself. So if I try smoking a lot of cannabis in the springtime, it's just not that enjoyable for me. I have no idea why. It's a mystery, to be honest. For some reason in the winter, I like it a lot more. In the summer, I'm kind of partial. I don't know. In the fall, I love it the most. That's when I feel most connected to the spirit of cannabis. Why? No idea. But as I started to understand that more and just started to be like, okay, I don't need to understand why. It's just the way it is. Life just seems to work better. Kind of a silly example, but again, I'm trying to make this as practical based on my own experience, but I highly recommend if you guys want your gold star, as I'm going through this, all right, you can either pause the show or listen to it back again. Find one real example of how these apply in your life. All right. Because at the end of the day, hearing how it resonates for me might be like, oh, cool, man, that's awesome. But until you make it practical for you, it's not really going to resonate. And maybe it doesn't resonate at all. And that's okay too. All right. So that's the principle of rhythm. Next, we probably come to the second most understood and commonly just talked about one, which is the law of cause and effect, which is every cause has its effect and every effect has its cause. And this one is really cool. I like this one a lot because if I was to say what the point of life is for me, it's to become the cause, not the effect. So if we look at the first principle of mentalism, the victim says, oh, life's just happening to me. They are just the effect of their reality. The cause is unbeknownst to them. It's outside of them. When you start to become the conscious creator and the hero of your own story, you start to actually become the cause. All right. You're the one choosing to tell yourself certain narratives. You're the one choosing to either take accountability or project your unconscious guilt outward. You're the one that's choosing to use certain language of yourself or not. You're the one that's choosing to either raise your vibration or lower it. You're the one that's deciding to be on either side of the polarity or balance in the middle. You're the one. Okay. And so at the end of the day, cause and effect is really just, to me, the most obvious way to look at the kind of like goal of reality, which is to be the cause, or hell in a way. Like to me, like there's actually a really interesting dichotomy between heaven and hell. To me, heaven is being the cause of your reality and understanding and knowing that and believing that. Hell to me is being the effect of your reality. Everything's outside of me. Everything's just random. I have no idea who I am, why I'm here, etc. That to me is one way I think about heaven and hell. Not the only way, but it's one way. So now moving on. Oh, actually, before we get there, as I clear my throat, I'm going to read you guys another just brief example of this. When something doesn't go as planned or you find yourself unhappy, ask yourself, what was the cause of this? Many times we find ourselves reacting to the world around us, trapped in a back and forth of reacting to our circumstances rather than forging our own path. When we take action to get the effect we want, we move from feeling like a victim to feeling empowered. So again, I kind of, repeated myself there, but at the same time, that's really for me, the goal here is to become the cause, not the effect. So the last principle here is the principle of gender. All right. This one maybe get me canceled, but I'm going to go into it anyway. So everything has masculine and feminine energies. All right. There are two genders according to Hermetic law. All right. So gender isn't everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. So the seventh principle states that all things have masculine and feminine qualities. I, as a man, have a masculine side and a feminine side. If you're a woman, you have a masculine and a feminine side. No matter what gender you choose to identify with, you're really only working with these two polarities, a masculine and feminine. Now, when it comes to gender, it's a big conversation in today's world. The way I choose to look at this is this. Whatever someone chooses to do with their own life, whatever game they choose to play, because that's what we're all doing here. We're all playing a game, all right? I'm playing a game where I'm a cannabis coach and a podcast host. If someone else wants to play a game where they're an animal or a different gender, like, cool. All experience is valid in the eyes of creator. But at the same time, one thing I believe is I don't believe I should force my game on other people, all right? And so at the end of the day, does this mean you need to go out and tell everyone there's only two gender? No, I'm not going to get into that, all right? It's more the energetics behind it. It's not the gender conversation of male and female. It's masculine and feminine, which is very different. So I'm going to read you guys a short thing I wrote on this. So actually, let me see which part I want to read here. So, okay. So accept all parts of yourself and understand that balance is in all is key for self-mastery. People like Buddha called this the middle way, all right? And it's all about the balance of masculine and feminine, of heavenly and earthbound, and of the mind, body, and spirit. When we can achieve this balance within ourselves, we're well equipped to harness all of these principles and use them in our lives for good. Now, if this sounds like a lot when you're hearing this, all right, we've been talking, I don't know how long now, for probably like 30 minutes or so. Don't worry if it sounds like a lot. These principles run very, very deep, and it can take a long time to fully understand and embody them. Each time you come back to them, you may understand them in a new way or on a deeper level. And in time, these principles can help you master your own mind and your life as a whole. And that is definitely how it is for me. Every time I look into these principles, I discover a new perspective or a new way to think about them, or a way in which, like, oh my God, this experience I was just having in life fits this principle. So again, like, I recommend don't think too much into this right now. Aside from just being like, oh, where does this show up in my life? What can I bring as an example? And then just let it go. What I like about the Hermetic Principles as well is I don't need to sit there reading scripture all goddamn day. I read one line and I go think about it. And then I might not think about it for another month. And then I come back to it, I read it again, and I'm like, whoa, now it's this way. All right. And for me, that just works better. So I wanted to go over these principles because they've really helped me. And maybe, just maybe, they'll help you too. So now we're going to dive into the second system that I love with all my heart and soul. And I use an amalgamation of these two systems primarily. There's some other stuff. Like I said, I cherry pick from different things. Like, oh, it's a cool idea. I'll take that. But these two systems are like the brunt, the meat and potatoes, if you will, of how I look at life and how I've, just chosen to view life so I can be happier on the other side. They help me be happier. All right. They help me feel more like me. And that is A Course in Miracles or Disappearance of the Universe, or they're really synonymous in a way. You guys have heard me talk about Disappearance of the Universe probably so many times you want to smash my head every time I talk about it. Okay. And I get it. So why do I talk about this so much? Because when I read this book, it changed everything for me. It was like Hermetics is kind of like, to me, the rules for the game we're playing here in the dream world. Disappearance of the Universe is when we leave the dream world and we start looking at what reality actually is and what God actually is. Okay. And Hermetics definitely, again, it's more cooking than baking. They definitely like, the all is mind is speaking to the idea of God being unconditional. But, when I read it, it was like, oh, this is how I'm interpreting this versus how I'm interpreting that. All right. I kind of see Hermetics, like I said, as like, okay, this is like the rules for the game we're playing here. Like if you play a video game, there are rules there. But when you stop playing the video game and you set it down, there are also like, there's a reality you're in that's different than the game world. There might not be an out of bounds area like there is in the game world when you're in reality. All right. So that's why I use these two systems in conjunction with one another. So first, I'm going to talk about the nature of reality as described by A Course in Miracles and Disappearance of the Universe. And again, I'm going to say this probably 5 more times, but as I say this, if you're listening to this and you believe in Christianity or Islam or Judaism, I am not trying to contradict your beliefs. You are completely fine. Not that I need to give you permission, but I'm just saying you can believe completely opposite me. That's awesome. I'll high five you and we can have a great conversation about it. I don't need to be right. All right. That's not why I'm doing this. But why I am doing is because when I read this, for me, it was so right that it burned a fucking hole in my brain. All right. So a question that I've asked a lot of my life, and also I've heard a lot of other people ask is, if God is real, then how could he, whatever they're referred to as, how could he allow his children to go through such hell down here? How could he allow genocide and war and all this dark ass shit? And that was honestly something that I reckoned with for quite a while too. I'm like, I believe in God, but yeah, fuck, that is kind of I don't know how to explain that. Well, in one of the first lines of Disappearance of the Universe, they open up by saying, God didn't create this world. And immediately I was like, that would make a lot of sense. Do share more, because I don't know why I would believe that. Like, I've never heard that before. But it makes a lot of sense just intuitively. Like, I didn't know why, but it just resonated as like, yes, 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 believe that. Look more into that. It was like that feeling of something in me being like, you're getting really warm, dude. Keep going in that direction. Like, all right. So I keep reading. And basically, the way that Art and Persa, the Ascended Masters that are speaking to Gary, the author in the book, talk about it in Disappearance of the Universe, is they say, imagine that oneness is here. All right. This is oneness. Now, again, because I have a perimeter around it, that would essentially not be oneness. But let's just say, for sake of conversation, that you can't see my fingers here. All right. And this is just the idea of oneness. Well, within oneness, there's everything and there's also nothing. It's a complete paradox. It's really hard for the human brain to wrap its head around. I can barely wrap my head around it at all. But I just understand it, or maybe understand it. I don't exactly know. Because at the end of the day, wise is the man who knows he does not know. But anyway, we're looking at oneness here. Well, part of oneness, all right, or maybe oneness, has a thought. What if there was something else than oneness? AKA, what if there was the opposite of oneness? And it seemed like an innocent enough thought at the time. But in that moment, something happened in a flash. And what happened was the opposite of oneness was created. Because what is oneness? It's God, and what is God? Creator, all right? So there was a creation born. And in this creation, there is the opposite of God. Now, some people may call this the Antichrist. That makes it sound really demonic and metal, all right? I don't think of it like that. I just think about it like the antithesis of God, the opposite polarity, or the opposite on the same spectrum of polarity as God, which is ego. So ego gets born, which is me, my, separate, somethingness, condition. It's the complete opposite of God, which is unconditional, oneness, all things and no things, all combined into one. So, because of this, the ego, which feels as though it's separate because it has separate identification, believes, oh my God, I just smacked my father in the face. Like, I can't believe that I chose to leave home. Home was so cushy and loving and just, oh my God, it was everything and nothing. And now I'm out here on my own. God's got to be really mad at me. Oneness has got to hate me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run. I'm going to run to a place where God could never find me. And so, boom, creates a dream world, which is what we're living in. And deep down, the unconscious guilt it feels is God must hate me. My dad must hate me. And when I say dad and father, I'm not speaking to like an actual man. I'm just using it because it's the language that biblical texts use and things like that. But at the same time, you know, this part believed, oh my God, I really separated. And so because of that, it had a lot of unconscious guilt. And so it created a world in which it could play out its unconscious guilt in to almost punish itself. And so if you think about the story of the prodigal son, this is exactly the story of the prodigal son. And that's why I say when I read the Bible it's not that I throw out the baby with the bathwater. There is some stuff in there that I realized that feels very deep. There's also a lot of stuff that I'm like, that feels like a dude wrote that, like an actual mortal man wrote that, not something that is unconditional wrote that. Okay. I want my whistle here. So in the story of the prodigal son, for those that may not have heard it, because I didn't grow up religious, so I didn't hear this until like, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. So maybe you're like me. Maybe you're out there like, what the fuck is this kid talking about? So in the story of the prodigal son, there's a father and two sons, and they're hanging out at home. Everything's gravy there. All right. They're having a friggin' blast. You know, they got everything they need. The father's pretty well off. They have all the food they can eat. They got love there. Everything's good. One brother's like, I want to see what's out there. I don't know why, but I do. And he decides he's going to leave home. So he packs his bags and he's like, yeah, I mean, this place is pretty cool, but just wait. I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to build an empire or meet all these people and have all these experiences, whatever it is. And so he decides to leave home. And so he's out there wandering around. And very quickly, he burns through all his money. He has to get like a job basically as a servant. And eventually he's like, man, I got to go home. This is not working out. And so the first thought that hits him is, fuck, my dad's going to be so mad at me for leaving home. I should have never left home. I thought I totally like was holier than thou and knew something that he didn't. But now I'm realizing, God, my dad was much more wise than I thought he was. And he's going to hate me. But you know what? I'm just going to go home and he can make me into a servant. That's all I'm worth. And whatever, you know, I'll meet my fate. So he goes walking home. And as he's walking home, he's telling himself like, God, you're such an idiot, dude. Like you had everything and you left it for nothing and all this stuff. And as he's getting close to his home, he starts to see the house out in the distance and he's walking and then he sees his dad. And he's like, oh God, here it comes. And he's expecting his dad to be all upset at him. And his dad throws his arms up and is like, my son has come home. And he tells one of the servants, please fetch us the I don't know, fattest cow or fattest pig, goat, whatever it was. He's like, we're going to have a feast tonight. My son is home. And the son's like, wait, you're not mad at me? And his dad's like, no, of course not, dude. I understood why you had to go out there, but I'm just happy you're home now. That's literally exactly the story of the ego and God. All right. That's why so many of us feel this deep, like, I don't know, feeling like I can't really put it into words because it's so beyond words, because it doesn't come from the realm of words. It comes from something that happened before the realm of words existed. But at the end of the day, why do we think so many religions say you're a sinner? Because it validates the belief we already feel. Yeah, we're bad. We fucked up coming here. We separated ourselves. We're bad. We're bad apples. That's why so many people enjoy that on a deep level, because that's what they feel they deserve. But to me, I always looked at that and was like, that doesn't feel empowering at all to think I'm a sinner. It's the same way that showing up to an AA meeting 10 years after I stopped drinking, let's say, and saying I'm still an addict, as if I just started 2 minutes before, doesn't really feel that empowering. You know, like there was no sin here. The only sin, if you want to think about sin as a misnomer or a mistake or whatever, was believing that separation really happened. It wasn't that separation really happened and we're a goofball for doing that, like religion would say. And also, when you look at religion and you look at these things, you know, the reason it never resonated for me is because religion is essentially, yes, you're separate from God. Yes, you're a sinner. There's nothing you can do about it. Tough shit. You can't speak to God, but we have this guy here or girl here. No, I think it's only guys. Guy here that can talk to God. But also, God needs money. And yeah, you might need to do an animal sacrifice to be forgiven. I'm like, huh? And I don't know too much about other religions, okay? I didn't do that much research into Islam and Judaism and things like that. But at the end of the day, all of these religions, to me, are built in the realm of condition, aka built in the dream. They're not really built for what reality really is. The same way that we go to school for 12 years, but yet we never learn about mindset. We never learn about emotional regulation. We never learn about emotional awareness. We never learn about relationship styles. We never learn about trauma. We never really learn about anything that it actually takes to live a high quality life as a human being. We never learn about business. We never learn about the idea of taxes being voluntary. We never learn about any of this stuff. We have to go find that on their own. It's the same with religion to me. I never, when I experienced religion, I never learned anything that was actually valuable. I learned all these things that were essentially only valuable if I wanted to believe the idea of religion. But they never led me anywhere good. And if they do for you, fucking awesome. All right. But they never did for me. And the reason for that, I believe, is that religion is rules for a dream that doesn't exist. And that's why I talk often, maybe you guys have seen my recent Instagram posts, where I say Jesus and Buddha would have never created the religion. Because if they were truly non-dualists, a non-dualist is someone that doesn't believe the dream is real. So why would they create conditions like, hey, if you want to reach God, you have to be vegan or you have to not eat meat? Why would that be real? If the dream isn't real, then nothing that happens in the dream is real. So does that mean that you should go around in nihilism or whatever? No, it means that there's something much more individual and something much more not logical based, much more qualitative that leads us to what is right and wrong for us subjectively. That's why I get very icky feeling when someone tries to say everyone needs to do it this way. Because again, the only river that's wrong is the one that tells you there's only one way to get there. So at the end of the day, why does the Dalai Lama eat meat if meat means that you won't be spiritually evolved? Why can I eat meat and feel like I am completely connecting with God? Well, because I don't choose to believe that God is conditional. God will love you only if you follow these rules. That's not unconditional. That's not what Jesus or Buddha were saying. Jesus was saying, wake up. It's all a dream. When he was having stakes driven through him, he did not feel pain. Why? Because he didn't believe in the dream. The same way that when you go to bed at night and you have a dream, when you wake up, do you believe all of that was real? Probably feels silly to even be asked that question. Like, no, what are you, silly, Ryan? Of course I don't believe it's real. Well, what if you could look at this one the same way? What if lucid dreaming was actually the goal, a microcosm of the goal of what this dream could be for you? This is one of the things that came to me as a idea with cannabis. When someone asks me, what's the point of learning all of this stuff? Like, why would you, who cares, right? Well, there's no point objectively. It just is what it is. But for me, what I ask them is, have you ever had a dream? Yeah, I've had a dream before. You ever had a lucid dream where you've woken up and you've realized you're dreaming when you're dreaming? Yeah, I've had one of those. Which one is more fun? Well, the lucid dream. Why? Because I know exactly what I'm doing and I know it's a dream and I know it's not even real. Cool. You think that could make this dream a little more exciting? I don't know. Made my dream more exciting. Maybe it works for you. But at the end of the day, what they're talking about, and one of the other reasons, and I mentioned this already through universalized systems, that I love Disappearance of the Universe and the idea of forgiveness that they talk about, which was Jesus's real teaching, one of them anyway, one of the many, is that forgiveness is universal. Right? The church, and my buddy Aaron Abke talks about this way more articulately than I can because he has a background in religion. But, he talks about how when Jesus was walking the planet, he was saying, just forgive yourself. Just forgive when you believe the dream is real. Forgive yourself for the things that you realize thereafter were maybe not coming from the highest expression of you. Maybe you get angry at someone and you realize after, man, that wasn't their cross to bear. Like, I got upset with them. Okay, just go forgive yourself. Say to them, like, hey, I'm sorry I showed up that way. That's not how I plan to show up. And then forgive yourself for it and move on with life. You're not going to be perfect. It's okay. But at the end of the day, then the church goes, well, wait a minute here. We're not going to make any money if people can just forgive themselves, right? So, okay, what if we say that Jesus said that in order to be forgiven, you need to make an animal sacrifice, and then we'll just sell all the animals. So the more forgiveness they need, the bigger the animal they got to buy. And that's literally one of the things that Jesus was going around to churches and being like, you've turned my father's house into a fucking hellhole here. He was letting all the animals out and everything. He's like, this is not what I'm saying at all. And that's one of the many reasons he got crucified. Allegedly, right? This is the myth anyway. I believe he really existed, but you can make your own interpretation. But, again, they do this all the time, okay? And by they, I mean other images of me walking the planet that I'm meant to not identify with anymore. Maybe I've had many lifetimes where I've been kind of in the lower vibrations and doing that kind of manipulative control stuff. Or as the law of one would state, maybe there have been many lifetimes I was on the negative polarity, service to self, egocentric, absence of God, to allow me to wake up and choose in this lifetime to make the decision to be a positively polarized individual, which is service to others, realm of God. So again, I don't know. That's why we can have compassion, but also discernment. Rach and I were talking about this earlier. If someone gets angry at me, all right, The old way that I would look at them is like, well, yeah, well, fuck you. All right. Like, fuck you too, whatever. Then maybe the second way I would look at that, a little bit more higher evolved or a little bit more clear, I guess you could say, not higher evolved. That would make a hierarchy, but a little clearer, like the windshield's a little clearer, is okay, you know what? Yeah, that person maybe just had a bad day. And that's okay, because I've had bad days and I know what that's like. And I'm not going to say that I'm some holier than thou person and I've never had a bad day and let it out on the wrong person. So I forgive them for what they did because I've been that person too sometimes. To me, the kind of like third level is saying, I forgive them not for what they did, but for what really never happened, because in a dream, nothing actually happens. And so again, like, I'm not saying this to say that if you're someone being physically abused in a relationship or something, you should be like, it's just not happening. Like, this has a caveat to it, okay? I'm saying this is more for you. Like, more for like, when you see something awful on the news that makes your stomach turn, being like, I forgive the fact that that was on the news because we're in a dream and that didn't really happen, okay? And the reason they speak to the idea of forgiveness is that the more that you identify and make the dream real, well, you are the creator of this reality. So the more you make it real, guess what? It's going to seem more real. And the more that this feels real, the world of the absence of God, the more that you're going to feel disconnected from who and what you truly are, which is God, because you're going deeper into the absence of God. So as you forgive and you accept and admit to yourself the dream isn't real, the dream isn't real, the dream isn't real, the dream isn't real, you start to come into more of the God realm. And so again, that has helped me a lot. It's a very simple dichotomy for me to look at. Am I identifying with the world or am I identifying with God? That's it, right? Am I identifying with duality or am I identifying with oneness and reality? That just helps me a lot. So at the end of the day, I think we've kind of gone over a good amount here of why a non-dualist would never create a religion, right? It's like using the dream to wake up from the dream. So, again, these two systems I really like putting together. Now, I did mention very quickly the Law of One. And I like one principle from the Law of One. I mean, I like the whole book, honestly. But one thing from, like, a lot of the stuff I've already said is said differently in the Law of One, but it's very resonant. But one thing I liked a lot from there as like a certain system to think of this through is negative and positive polarity. So what's one other way that life starts to be a lot more fun for me? Looking at it in this way. So if we look out into the world and we see the people like a Bill Gates or Fauci or Palantir or any of these people, not that Palantir is a person, I just forget the guy that actually created it. But, if we see any of these people that we feel are dark, like we feel like, ooh, they're doing some shit out there that we don't agree with, it can seem very heavy. All right. It can make the world feel very heavy. But if we choose to look at it through this lens, at least for me, it helped. So I'm going to share it with you. When we watch Star Wars, do we think that Luke Skywalker would have become Luke Skywalker if he didn't have Darth Vader to inspire him and motivate him? Do you think if Star Wars started and Luke was like smoking a joint, he's like, Yoda, I want to be a Jedi. And Yoda was like, it's your lucky day. I got an extra lightsaber. Just threw it to him. And he's like, sick. And that was the end of the movie. Do you think that would be as powerful? It'd be funny as hell. But would it be as powerful? No. And why is that? Because there was no struggle. There was no having to make a line in the sand and decision. There was no motivation from the other side. There was no repulsion from the other side. Luke Skywalker was standing against everything Darth Vader was. But he had to have an example of what he was against to be able to actually know what he was against. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. So, for instance, Darth Vader, in this analogy we're saying here, was a negatively polarized individual. He was identifying with the ego, power, or actually force, as David Hawkins would say, not power. And he was in service to self. I'll do whatever I can to get to the top, no matter who I got to kill, who I got to cut down, whatever. It's me, me, me. The whole world revolves around me. And when we look at people that are trying to push schmaxines or whatever it is on everyone, What are they trying to do? They're trying to control us through fear. So, oh, okay, I can categorize them now. They're negatively polarized individuals. Perfect. Now, here's the second part. What do we do with that information? Well, I'll tell you what I do. Maybe it's what you do. I choose to feel grateful that their souls are going through a very hard fucking mission. Because eventually, there's only so far you can go into the absence of God before you got to kind of turn around. But the deeper you go, the more painful it is when you realize what you've done. And so these brave souls are signing up to go on this fucking journey to wake other people up of experiencing the absence of God, doing a lot of things that are really not good if we're talking about 3D plane terminology here of duality. But until I see that, like when I see war on TV or I see someone trying to push vaccines or schmaxines, through whatever it is, I know that's not me, right? And that makes me have to make a decision. No, that's not me. I'm not doing that. And like the Law of One says, God doesn't care what decision you make. All right. The only quote unquote bad decision, which again, it's not really bad, but just for sake of a better term, I'm going to use that terminology. The only bad decision you can make is to not make a decision, to be indifferent. And I'm sure you guys have met people like this. Maybe you've even been this person sometimes, right? I have in the past, where like sometimes your service to self, sometimes your service to others, you're kind of in between. Like that's just the sea of indifference. That's where you burn out all your energy because you haven't made a decision. Life is one big process of just making decisions. The faster you can make decisions and be like, this is what I'm doing, the better. You guys have heard me talk a lot about Enlifted and word magic. And I've had Mark and Kim and Adam and Chase and Dave and so many people from Enlifted on. What's one of the main teachings Enlifted talks about? Getting rid of soft talk. Well, I think maybe next week I might start going to the gym. That's vague as shit. Are you going to go or are you going to not? Say, Monday morning at 6 a.m., I am going to go to the gym. Period. I've made a decision and I'm sticking to it. What creates a lot of distortion and friction in life is people that don't know how to make a decision and stick with it, which leads them to not trust themselves, which leads them to not have faith in themselves, and which leads them to not have faith in others because as within, so without. If you don't have faith in yourself, you're not going to expect anything from other people. And that's going to make your vibration low, which guess what? Is going to bring in examples that validate what you believe. And then probably this person is going to be like, see, that's why I can't trust other people. No, you can't trust other people because you haven't trusted yourself because you can't make decisions. All right. So again, that's a practical example, once again, of how Hermetics, all right, and Disappearance of the Universe, A Course in Miracles, and this all work together in a beautiful way. So at the end of the day, I have a couple other notes here that I wanted to talk about. Let's see. Okay, I had this statement on here. So one thing I've realized for myself is that the universe, the nature of the universe, quote unquote, is it's one big gaslight. It's essentially the ego projecting a world that makes you think it's very real and an illusion that there's 8 billion different selves here and that you have a start and an end date. And like everything here is one big gaslight compared to what reality actually is. The nature of reality is gaslighting, or this reality, I should say. And the other part is thirst traps. So this is how the ego works as I understand it. Everything I've already said, I'm not going to repeat myself about the ego feeling unconscious guilt from the separation it really feel happens. So it created this world to run away from God. And what does it do to make sure that you don't realize what's really happening here? Well, it gives you thirst traps, aka things to grab your attention. Look what's happening halfway across the planet. Is anthrax in your drinking water? Look what this person said to this person. Oh my God, look at someone being murdered on live TV. All these things are just trying to get your attention away from the fact that if you close your eyes long enough, you'll realize that none of this is real. Straight up. Okay. So one of the most important things I can say here as we start to kind of wind down this episode is be very aware of where you're placing your intention and intention. Because I've already gone over the fact that there's no one else here to blame. You are the creator of your reality. You are the one that makes you either the hero of your story or makes you the villain of your story. You are the one that holds all the power and all the keys to live the most amazing and have the most amazing dream possible or have a fucking nightmare. It's you and you alone. So every single action you take, every single thought you have, every single emotion you have is information coming back to you. But if you don't have the awareness or the stillness to be able to pay attention to the subtle energies going on behind you, then you are always going to be a pawn of the system, quote unquote, out there, which is the system that you, as the child of God, created, playing the role of the ego to escape your own unconscious guilt from the seeming separation from God that never happened. The more that you get into stillness, the more that you take back your power, the more you can start to realize exactly what I started with this podcast with. Nature loves courage. By hurling yourself into the abyss, all right, and realizing there's a feather bed on the other side waiting for you. AKA by coming home to your dad and realizing not only was he not mad at you, but he's so proud of you for going out there and going on an adventure, and he's just happy you're home now. That's it. That's really the whole idea here, to me anyway, is that I can either look out there at all the thirst traps and all the things happening, and let's be real. Sometimes the entertainment show is fun. All right. I like watching movies. I like looking out into the world sometimes, but I'm also very aware of how much I'm doing it and what's happening to my nervous system as I'm doing it. So for instance, I saw Alex Zeck, good buddy of mine, talking about this the other day. He said, your algorithm, everyone's algorithm is showing them something different, but many of these algorithms are showing you chaos. He said, I'm driving in Austin right now. This is him talking, not me. Okay, I'm obviously here in front of a computer in Boston, Massachusetts. But he said, I'm in Austin right now. I'm driving down the street. I'm seeing people walking, holding hands. I'm seeing maybe a gay pride flag. I'm seeing maybe over here, a Trump sign, whatever. There's no chaos. Everything's just existing. But when I go online, all of a sudden, most reels are people at each other's throats. You know, there's someone trying to take down a gay pride flag and being like, Trump this, Trump that. Or there's people on the other side being like, you're a narcissist because you like Trump. Like all this is happening. But yet when I walk out my door, none of that's happening. So again, if I look on those reels all day, what am I going to start to believe? Oh my God, the world's in chaos. Oh my God, I have to go get guns. Oh my God, I have to do all this. And I'm not saying that you can't think those things or whatever, right? But again, what's that going to do to your experience of reality? Is it going to make it better or worse? I mean, every time I've done it, it's made my reality a lot worse. You guys can obviously make your own decision, but it really seems like we're in a time where it's never been more important to be very hyper aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it and what you're looking to get from it. You know, what I realized about, 4 years ago was that I really wanted to get back into playing guitar because I was just like, the time's going by anyway. I'm just spending time looking at my phone or, going online and looking up new ways to excel in whatever it is. But I could just be getting better at guitar every day. So why don't I just put my focus there instead? So the second piece of homework I want you guys to walk away with this episode with is just really asking yourself, do an energy audit, an attention and intention audit, and a focus audit, right? They're kind of all the same thing. Be like, where am I losing a lot of my bandwidth every day? Especially if you have goals. Like if you're someone listening to this who's getting inspired and is like, I want to go out there and start a business or whatever. Okay, great. I totally support that. And I believe in you. Okay, I want to say that. And what I'm aware of is if you're like me, the hardest thing was accepting exactly what I said at the beginning. Like, oh shit, I'm where I am because I put myself here. And part of how I put myself there was where I was putting my attention. I wasn't aware enough to realize I was wasting a lot of my bandwidth every day looking at shit and spending time with even certain people that weren't really resonating with me. And I wasn't resonating with them. So until I did that energy audit and I really took back my power, and I do this a lot. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that in a little while here because it's something that like I said, I do all the time. But until I did that, I was like, man, where's the time going? God, I'm so tired at the end of the day. I don't have time to do these things. Well, yeah, I wasn't going to bed early enough. I wasn't waking up early enough. I was overstimulating myself because my circadian rhythm was off. All these things add up. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. So really figure out where are you putting your attention and energy every day? And if you want to create something new in life, especially something big, you're going to have to take back some of that energy. You got to subtract before you can add. All right. Maybe you guys are like me. I used to bring all the groceries in one trip all the time. But at the same time, we don't want to make a habit out of that in life. Because again, what does that do? It's, I'm under a lot of stress and pressure. And that's no way to live life because we can't show up, especially if you want to be in a position of service. I coach, all right? If I showed up to my appointment stressed as fuck because I was just burning myself out, Why would people work with me? Why? My whole point here is to be an example of what is possible for you. The same way that I'm still learning from other people, the example of who I can become, like even a clearer version of me, a more aligned version of me, a more focused version of me. I am figuring this out right alongside any of you guys that listen to the show. All right. So let me be an example for you guys. Like if I can do it, you can do it too. All right. I'm nothing special. No more special than you. We're all special, but I'm no more special than you. If I can do this, literally anyone can. All right. And so I believe in you. So let's see. Okay. So one of the last things I wanted to say before I'll dive into my ultimate last thing here, double last things, is what do you do with all this? Like we just went for an hour and 10 minutes here of a lot of information. All right. What the fuck do you do with all this? Do you walk away feeling inspired and then wake up tomorrow in the same reality? No. Here's what I would say. All right. We have your couple pieces of homework, which is to take each principle of the Hermetic Principles and find an example in your life of either how one's working great or one's maybe out of alignment you're now realizing. Step 2, we have the energy audit. Where are you losing energy every day? What can you tighten up on? And what are you tightening up for? Like what wants to come into your life? What's something you can really have fun with? And then number 3 is utilize all of this information, everything we've talked about, to be able to more accurately, efficiently, and effectively follow the fun in your life. Like, what if it was as simple, guys, as just following what's fun to you? Because that's all I've done. All right. Now, is setting up a bank account super fun? No, but it plays into me having a business. So I don't mean that every single thing is going to be like, fuck yeah, I'm having so much fun. But ideally, like I'll set the bank account up because it allows me to have my business and I love it. Doing taxes when I used to do them. Like, is that super fun? No, but it was something that I thought I had to do. So I did it. So really, like, use all of this to remember who you are by following the fun. Like I said before, your own being is going to give you a feeling of warmer or colder. All right. Like if you meet someone and you feel this huge uptick in energy, it's probably because that person's good for you. If you go around someone and you're like, oh God, that felt heavy. Yeah, you probably don't want to become best friends with that person. That's probably not the person you want to do sleepovers with. Okay. So this is obvious. We all experience this in different ways. If your partner asks you, what do you want for dinner? We're going to make curry or pizza. When you hear that, there's going to be a feeling that makes you go, I want pizza. All right. Start to get more in touch with what that feeling is and what it feels like, because that feeling will take you everywhere you're meant to go. It'll have you meet all the people you're meant to meet, but only if you're aware enough to pay attention to it. And again, if you're giving all your energy away every day and in stimulation land and talking about what's happening on the other side of the world, some war happening that you're not going to do anything for, just posting online, oh, you shouldn't do this. Like, that's not going to do anything. The best thing we can do for ourselves is to work on ourselves. And also the best thing we can do for others is to also work on ourselves. The ultimate thirst trap is that we got to go fix the world out there. But no, the real answer is we have to show up in the world differently. Because again, why did Jesus change the planet? Okay. He wasn't trying to fix everything in the world. He was trying to show us an example of who we already are underneath all the fucking nonsense we believed is us. And he changed the world and he's still being talked about 2,000 some odd years later. Okay. That's all he was doing. So if you believe that by going out there, you're going to do anything, it's a fool's errand. All right. The best thing you can do is work on yourself, allow what working on yourself allows to breed out of you and bring out of you to be the shining example that leads you into exactly who you're meant to be, what role you're meant to be playing in this lifetime, and allow the energy you're coming from to positively affect the people it's meant to positively affect. And also to negatively affect the people it's meant to negatively affect. When Jesus walked the planet, not everyone loved him. Okay? He ended up getting crucified. Need I remind you? So at the end of the day, those people that crucified him also now had other lessons that they were learning, and that was part of their forgiveness lessons too. And that's why he didn't feel any pain, because he saw it all happening. Forgive them. They know not what they do. They'll learn. They're like little kids right now, even in their adult bodies. They're going to learn that we're all one being, and it's all good. No worries. It's all good. And that's the same energy we can come with if we choose to. And again, there's no right or wrong. So if you think all this is bullshit, cool. Awesome. I don't care. If you think it's all awesome, cool. I don't care. It's all the same. But for me, I like sharing the things that help me because I wouldn't be where I am if people that I respected and idolized and looked up to and whatever it is, whatever reason you listen to the show, you like my energy or you think I'm weird, whatever it is, I wouldn't be where I am if those people didn't share their belief systems with me. And some of them, didn't really like them. Some of them, though, I was like, that is sick. I like that. And that's like literally like I look at it like a changing room at Marshall's. I walk in, I'm looking through the clothes. I'm like, ooh, that one might go good. Picking some others out. I'm like, ooh, that one's sick too. Then I go to the changing room. I try one on and I'm like, yeah, that was better in hindsight than actual practicality. And that's sometimes what happens. And that's okay. That's what actually makes the dream so beautiful is that this is the only way we can experience condition. All right. Like I'll talk a lot of not shit, but I'll talk a lot of like, hey, condition's not real life, yada, yada. But it is a game and it's a fun game. Just because I know Grand Theft Auto or PUBG or whatever video game I want to play is not real life. Does that make it not fun? No, it actually makes it more fun. That's why I'm doing it. But I have to be aware of that for it to be fun. Because if I thought I really was in that game, it wouldn't be as fun as when I know I'm the one playing the game. So again, take what you will, leave what you don't. It's all good. Now, I wanted to give you guys some updates. So, there's been a lot of stuff occurring in my life recently. A lot of really amazing stuff, like stuff that gives me chills just thinking about it. So what this has helped me realize or had me realize is, I pay attention to what's happening in my own life. And I've learned to do that through meditating and all the things I already talked about for an hour and 16 minutes here. And so when things start happening, I start asking questions and start tuning into the energy. And one of the things that's been coming through for me is that I want to bring the podcast down to 2 episodes a month instead of 4 for the next few months or so. Why? Because life is asking some other things of me, some other things that are taking quite a bit of bandwidth. So I'm going to be vague about one of these things anyway. And you guys can reach out if you want more context, because I don't like talking a lot about this stuff because I don't really feel it's responsible to talk about it, because it's kind of like the ultimate shiny object stuff. And if someone hears this out of context and tries to go do something with it, they can get in trouble. And so I don't want to be a part of that. But let's just say that I've been understanding a lot more about finance, and I've been working with a company that knows some very interesting ways to look at reality through the lens of finance, through the lens of sovereignty, through the lens of trust law. And, again, if you guys know Brandon Joe Williams, you probably have an idea of what I'm talking about. If you don't, go look him up, and then you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. I've had people on this show that have talked about it, so it's not something that I'm like against talking about. It's just that for me personally, I was one of those people that heard this stuff and then tried to go balls to the wall into it, and luckily didn't get myself in any trouble. But I know a lot of people out there right now are struggling when it comes to money. And as a result of that, they feel unsafe. And if I start to say things like, you can get this for free or you can get that for free, that lack of safety within them and that motivation and anxiety they have to make themselves feel safe financially might make them do some crazy shit. It's kind of like if you tell someone something that maybe they need to hear, but they're drunk as shit, yeah, they probably won't respond in the same way as if they were sober. All right. Same truth, just different things. So at the same time, I do want any of you guys that are interested in this realm of sovereignty, of, let's just say, opening up different jurisdictions, of anyone who is willing to go the distance, to reach out to me about this. There is a company I've been working with who have changed my life in incredible ways. And one of the roles I've been taking on is much more of my connector role. Like, I love running my own business. I'll always do it. But one of the things I'm gifted at, and it's just one of the things I came out of the womb gifted at, is, and it's actually in my Jupiter placement too, Rachel talks about it, is being a connector. I meet someone and I'm like, I know exactly who you need to meet. I know exactly what business you'd be a great part of. I know exactly what podcast you do good on. It just comes to me naturally. And so it's always been kind of a fun thing for me to do. Like, oh, I'll help you get on podcasts or whatever. Recently, I've realized I think it has a much bigger role in my life. I think that there are ways that I can help people immensely through playing that connector role. I undervalued it for years because I was like, oh, I'm just meeting someone and passing them to this person. I'm like, what does that really do? Well, I've had it reflected to me many times recently, like, dude, that person you connected me with changed my fucking life. And I don't know what I would do if you hadn't connected me to them. And that made me realize, holy shit, okay, this is a new way to kind of see myself. Where, again, like you guys all have this too. Something that just comes so naturally to you that you just think everyone must be like that. Like it's not even something you think about. And then as you start to maybe become more aware, you start to have relationships in your life, whatever it is, you start to realize like, oh shit, I guess that thing is not as common as I thought. And then if you're around other aware people, they'll validate you and they'll say like, hey, do you notice that thing you do that's like really epic? And you're like, wait, what? Like little old me? What do you mean? And they're like, no, dude, that's like seriously really epic. And that's something I always do with my clients now because I never realized how important that is. I'm a guy, so I can talk to the man's perspective, but being around other men and women, you guys are already amazing at this stuff. Men have to create men's groups and stuff to do this stuff, and I'm glad they are. But, being able to be around other people, but especially as a man, around other men that can be like, hey, man, do you see who you are and like, how you show up and like how valuable that is? That's something that I take a lot of pride in being able to give my clients because I remember when I had never had that experience before and how much I didn't know. Like I didn't know that. And for anyone that knows me personally, like I am completely a goofball. Like when I talk on this show, I'm in a little bit of a different archetype. I'm more in like my warrior archetype, but I have a deep magician and magician archetype within me. And so, again, like I never knew I was funny. Never knew. It wasn't until I started going down to the lake house and people were laughing their asses off and being like, dude, you're like so funny that I was like, wait, what? Like, no, everyone's, I don't know. I just have, silly sayings I say. And they're like, yeah, they're hilarious. I'm like, really? And, again, like these things may sound trivial, but they've added a lot to my life. And they've started to be able to allow me more and more to find where I really get the most joy living my life. And so as a result, recently I've had a lot of stuff happening all at once. And it seems like every week, I'm like, oh shit, I got to get the podcast ready. And that's my first sign right there. Like there was at one point where it was very easy for me to put out 4 episodes a month. It was like I had them stacked and, I had like 3 months booked out. And that's just not happening right now. And so I'm like, okay, what is God asking of me? What am I asking of myself? Well, maybe I'm having a little bit more fun in that sandbox over there. I'm still having a lot of fun in this sandbox. Like I'm loving doing this right now. But at the same time, like I need to take a little bit of my bandwidth back for a little bit of time to get some other foundation set up and to be able to like get back to more and more people and play this connector role in a couple different businesses that I'm working with. One being Sacred Smoke Collective, as you guys know. I'm screaming that thing from the fucking rooftops. Link will be in the show notes for that. And the other one is this Gentrez company that I'm working with. And so what I'm going to do is for anyone that's interested, and I know I've been super vague here, and I've done that on purpose for reasons aforementioned, but for anyone who, as I was saying that, just resonated, or maybe you know a little bit about sovereignty, maybe you're a little more aware than the average person with this stuff, and you're like, maybe I think I know what he's talking about, and I want to reach out to him, reach out to me on Instagram, okay? Reach out to me, and let me know what you're interested in. Let me know what pinged your attention, okay? And then I will make the decision of whether or not I want to share information with you. Not because of a hierarchy or anything, just because like I said, like I got to figure out where you're at in your nervous system. One thing I realized in connecting a lot of people to these people over the past 6 months is that I probably connected about 40 people with them and only one person has made it the whole way through. Why is that? Because only one person was really in a place in the nervous system to go through the discomfort it was going to take to come out the other side. Because when you get into what I'm talking about, it's almost like backwards land, but it's actually the way life and finance really work. Everything you've ever learned starts to be turned upside down when it comes to money, finance, and a lot of other stuff too. Okay. And so it's not just the act of like, whoa, sick, I can get some free money or whatever. Like, yeah, it all sounds great. Anyone I tell about it is like, dude, connect me with them. Like, I'm so in. And then like, not really a lot happens, and there are some people that are almost all the way through the process. I give anyone out there who's doing that a lot of credit. And this isn't from a place of like, I went through this too, guys. It was fucking scary. I'll be the first to say, okay, it was scary. It triggered a lot of like stories that weren't mine that I didn't realize I had until I decided to go on a different direction. So trust me when I say I'm not sitting here being like, I was completely fine. I didn't have any feeling. Like, nah, that shit scared the fuck out of me. But I also knew that feeling deep down inside, because I meditate and I do my things, was telling me it's okay, you're safe, just keep going. And so I started to see like, oh yeah, in the cave you fear most to enter holds the treasure you seek. And so for anyone interested, reach out. I got you. And I'm super excited. So this episode, obviously will come out tomorrow. I'm saying this like you guys don't know that. But the next episode after this will be 2 weeks out. The next one, 2 weeks out. Okay. This is going to be for, I don't know. I'm seeing in my mind about 2 to 3 months, and then we'll come back to regular every week. But I really appreciate you guys tuning in every week. You know, this is not this is something I've struggled with for the last couple of months, to be honest, you know, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to. I love the podcast and I love being able to give out, you know, and share my viewpoint and share with other listeners and whatnot. It's something I always will do. But like I said before, I would be lying to you guys and a total hypocrite if I was saying, take accountability of your energy and focus, and then I wasn't doing that. So let me be the example here. This is what this looks like. Like, yeah, I love the podcast. I would love to keep doing episodes every week. But right now I feel something birthing out of me that's taking a lot of bandwidth that I don't want to not be able to show up for you guys. I don't want to, you know, just put together half-assed episodes. I want to do everything I do to 100%. And right now, if I'm being honest with myself, I can't do both of these things at 100% right now if I'm doing both of them at the same time. So I'm going to step back, right? Take an extra week off every other week and be able to really tune more into my energy, be able to speak to more people, be able to understand and understand this realm a little bit more, and understand myself more, because that's really what this is all about. We're just fucking around and we're finding out. So I love you guys. Thank you for hanging with me for almost an hour and a half. That's definitely the longest solo cast I've ever done, and I had a blast. I hope you guys did too. In the show notes, I'll have the link for Sacred Smoke Collective. I'm also going to throw in there, we have the Sexual Mastery edition of Breathe with Cannabis coming up. Fucking epic, okay? Who doesn't want to have more sex? I don't know anyone, maybe asexual people, I guess them. But, you know, again, this is an amazing opportunity to not just increase, like, yeah, we call it sexual mastery, but it's not just about like having more sex. It's not about that. It's about increasing intimacy first with yourself. Why? Well, as within, so without, as above, so below. So you guys are seeing, this is why we talk about this stuff. Okay. Like I said, hopefully you guys can see a lot of where I kind of say things from at this point. Like, I'm not just making this stuff up. It's coming from these systems that I resonate with a lot. And that's why we created Sexual Mastery, because we knew that some people will show up like, fuck yeah, I want to have more sex. And then we're going to teach them, hey, intimacy starts with yourself. And if you're not having a lot of sex or whatever you think is the goal when it comes to intimacy and sexual health, it's not out there that's the issue. It's in here. And so if you're looking to add more intimacy, both to first to yourself, because what is intimacy? Into you, me, see. It's allowing yourself and someone else to see into yourself. That's what intimacy is, to me anyway. And so if you want to come out and have a blast, you know, guys, like, our Breathe with Cannabis Collective is so powerful. We have so many recordings in there. We just did the retreat. It was epic. I talked about it last week. But we're literally doing this for $33 a month. That's less than a Starbucks coffee 5 days a week. I mean, it's almost the price of a Starbucks coffee for 7 days in a row. Maybe only like 4 days. And the way I look at it is this. If you're someone who resonates with me enough to be listening to my show, resonates enough with cannabis to be utilizing cannabis, and you can't put $33 a month towards your development, I don't know how much easier we can make it. Like, when I got into this space, it was like $3 to $5 grand per program I took. And I took 8 in the first year. Did I have the money? No. I took out credit cards because I believed in myself. Am I saying you have to do that? No. But I am saying, like, be aware that we're doing this because we understand not everyone has the money and we don't want to make people take out credit cards. We're doing this so you guys can have a $33 a month subscription, pretty much the price is Netflix, where you can come out and fucking remember who and what you truly are, and be in a community of other people who are also remembering who and what they truly are. And then going to retreats, being around people that remember who and what they truly are. Guess what happens when you put yourself in those kind of situations? You become someone who remembers who and what they truly are. So I love you guys. I hope you have the best day ever. As always, may the source be with you, and I'll see you in a couple weeks to infinity and beyond. Peace for now.